Okay, so more about hooks. Hooks can be all sorts of sizes and shapes and everything else. You do need to make sure if you're working with something that is doesn't have tension on it, isn't pulling. You know, like on the back of a necklace, the necklace is pulling down on it, so that helps a hook work because it locks it in, right? But if it's something like a bracelet that's always bouncing around, then one of the problems you're going to have is that the hook is going to tend to come undone unless you engineer it really specially. And we'll talk about that in a second. I want to show you a couple special hooks. This is one that works pretty well for that. And the other thing this one does that I want to point out to you is that this is a commercial chain. See this chain? It's just commercially available. But what I did was to make a hook for it that I think is particularly nice, and it goes along with the hook really well. So this is one of the ones I made, like I just drew for you, where I took it, I soldered the little ring shut, soldered this onto the little chain right here, okay? And then I curved it and hammered it. And the end of it, this is going to be hard to see. The end of it right here, I hammered flat, but I also turned it up just a touch. Can you see that it turns up? It comes along here and turns up just a little bit. So what that enables me to do is that on this last one, I don't have a jump ring on this. I just have the end of the chain, but it enables me to catch this. Can you hear that? It clicks. That's because this is work hardened to the point where this stays shut. And that lets me wear this where it's, it won't pull out without me pulling it, right? So when it's on there, it's fine. And even if it's slack, it won't just give up. It won't pull out. I have to actually physically pull it out. So that's something you have to think about when you're doing chains of any sort, is whether it's going to be slack, whether it's going to be tight, whether there's going to be pressure on it. Another thing you can do is to make it complicated. And the way you can do that, I love this one. I didn't make this, but somebody else did. It's just beautiful. This is the chain, which I think is gorgeous. And this is the clasp right here, the hook. And what it does is that the ring has to come around. I might have to show you this on my phone in a bit. Okay, so it comes around here. It snaps through there, comes around again. Let me get this in a better position. Okay, this is what it looks like. Can you see that? There. So what happens is it comes, hi Gil. So it comes around here, comes around, and so basically you have to feed it around several times. So I'm going to do it. I'll do this. It comes over this, okay, around here. See how I'm feeding it on? And then it's on. So it not only does it have that snap thing, but in order to come out, it has to come around and back on itself. So this would be great for a bracelet, because there's no way that wearing a bracelet, it's going to come out and go completely backwards and make that entire circle. All right, so that's a really good one for that. Hooks can also be really fancy and really fun. This is one that it's on a huge woven chain. Yeah. And what this one does is that it goes through here, through here, through here, through here, and then hangs down the back of the neck. There, like that. Hang on. If I start with it not twisted, it works a lot.
Did you make that?
No, Nancy Jo made I made the clasp. She made the
Is she the one that lives out in Joshua Tree?
Yes. Okay.
It's very pretty.
Thank you. I'm muting you, Pam. Okay. Okay, so this is, you can see that this is a really fancy clasp. You can see it's not likely to come undone the way it's pulled. But the other thing I want you to notice is that on a necklace, it's always going to pull from the 2 points of attachment. And if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. But you can also control that. So in other words, on a piece like, let's say I've got one that looks like this. This is my clasp, okay? If I only put this on here, it's going to hang like this. If I go to the next loop, it's going to hang like this. If I go to the next loop, it's going to hang like this. So I can control how that hangs and where it hangs depending on how far I put this up. It's also for something that is slack, if I have to do this to put it on, chances of it coming off are not good, right? It's not going to fall off. This is not practical for a bracelet, obviously, but it's really nice for a necklace. It'll work really well. Another one that'll work well that doesn't come off easily is this one. It's called a sister hook. And this one, the trick to this is that it's got two parts that look the same. It's got a jump ring on it, but the opening is either near the jump ring or halfway down. And that's true for both of them. And then when they're soldered on the piece or put on the piece, they're opposite each other. Can you see the openings are opposite each other? And then when you put them on, what you have to do is to put them 90 degrees to each other, slip them in, and they wear like this. But the chances of them coming off, they won't come off here. It has to be lined up with that other opening to do that. So when you have these, what you have to do is that you have to make sure that these are strong enough that they're not going to pull open, because if it pulls open, then it's going to come off in places I don't want it to, right? The other thing you can do is this one. This one is round wire, but it's tapered. Can you see the right there? See that the ends are tapered? Right there. Okay. And both of them, it's true for both of them. They're both tapered like that. But still, I have to put this at 90 degrees, snap them in, and then I could wear it. Okay. This is one I want to show you because not long ago we did hollow forms. So this one is a hollow form. See the hollow form? And what I did was on one end, I made basically a jump ring. So this is just a fancy jump ring to go through one end of it. This end is a hook. And it's a simple hook. But what I did was to leave this end a little bit blunt, but also curved up a bit so that I can easily start it in here, fish it around, and then you can see what I've got. So this would be a beautiful, here, a beautiful piece on a necklace that would hang from here to here. And it's got the hollow form, because a lot of you have those hollow forms that you're still playing with. All right.
Deb, can you show that one again?
Uh-huh.
Just how it's attached?
So this one, let's talk about this end first. This end, all this end is, eventually I will solder this. I'll solder it there and there, right? But right now it's not soldered because it's not attached to anything. So this is basically just a glorified jump ring. This is just, I made this a really pretty, pretty jump ring kind of thing. This end that I'm holding, well, now I'll drop it. This end is the hook, okay? And eventually I would put this, the clasp on, or the jump ring on something, and I'll solder that. But for now, what it does is that, can you see here too? It catches right here. So I have to spring it in and out of here, which is what I want. I don't want it to just free float in and out of there. I want it to catch. And then what I can do is, there. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. These are other little hooks that I made as samples just to show you. This one has a melted end on it. It's a really pretty one. You need to be aware again that this is going to hang from here to here. It's going to hang straight across like that. So if you want it to hang, you know, differently, you're going to have to engineer it differently. This is one I wanted to show you because what I did was to very slightly flatten out this end, and I left it longer than the jump ring. And what that does is that that enables me, when this is being worn, to easily take something and slip it in there. But see how it springs back? It springs back because this got work hardened. Now, because I already bent this, and it is work hardened, and I want to keep it work hardened, when I go to solder this part onto something, what I'm going to do with it is that I'll take a piece of red brass and I'll just lay it over all of this except where my solder joint is, right there. So it'll become soft right there, but it won't become soft up in here, which is what provides the spring clasp for it, what makes it catch really well. Okay. This came from the Calder exhibit. He had a lot of them like this. These are interesting. So they're each independent hooks. They're twisted a little bit. They hook like this, but when they hang, remember that it's going to pull pretty much straight apart like this. So that's what they're going to look like. So you need to think about how if it's a hook on two parts like this, how they're going to hang on each other, how they're going to look. What else? I have 2 more to show you, 3 more to show you. Okay. So this is one, again, I have shown you before. This is a fused bracelet. Remember the bracelet right there. And this is the hook. See the hook? Now, because it's also a little fused part like that, it is, and also because it snaps into place, it's not super visible when it's hooked, when it's on, like that. It also, you heard it snap. That's that keeps this bracelet from falling off. I've never had an issue with this. You have to make sure though that that's work hardened, that snaps. Bracelets especially are really bad about coming off if that's even slightly loose. So you have to make sure your material is thick enough and that it's work hardened. This is another one I've been playing around with for a long time. This is a very heavy piece. This is a forged piece, beautiful hook, and you could do a beautiful, beautiful eye basically to go with it, jump ring to go with it. But you need to remember with a hook like this, that this is very, very heavy. And so if I want this to stay on the back of a necklace, then I better have a darn heavy pendant, because if I don't, this is going to be falling around to the front the whole time. Now, that doesn't mean I can't have it in the front. It might be fine. You know, that, I mean, it could basically be the focal point of my pendant, right? With another piece coming off. And then that's fine if it hangs down on the bottom. So, so I got some questions. Gauges of wire. You know, it really depends on the pendant and what you're doing. Some of the early ones that I showed you, this one, for instance, let me dig this out. This piece. This is 18 gauge wire. It's really relatively little and relatively thin, but this piece is work hardened. The hook is work hardened on it. And it's the same gauge as the rest of the chain, and it works quite well. This piece is probably 12 gauge, and it holds up just fine. These pieces are also 12 gauge, but could be thinner probably. The little, where's the really little one I did? These guys that are really tiny, that one was probably 16 gauge, could have been 18, but they're quite small. So it really depends on what you're doing. It really depends on the chain and what you're doing and what you want it to look like and how you want it to feel. I mean, you can do anything from something super heavy. This one initially was probably, I want to say 4 gauge, and then it was forged. So it can be all over the map. Work hardening, I'll go over this really fast. Most of you know this because I've been through this lots and lots of times, but work hardening. In order to work harden a piece of metal, what you need to do is elongate its crystalline structure. So metal's a crystalline structure where everything stacks really nicely together. When you elongate that crystalline structure, when you take that and the crystals begin to pull, to basically stretch out some, that's when metal gets work hardened. And so you can do that lots and lots of ways. One way is to hammer on it. One way is to put it through the rolling mill. One way is to bend it back and forth. One way is to twist it. There's lots of ways that you can work harden metal. And putting it in a tumbler, some people say that work hardens it. That only does what we call case hardening. So basically the shot in the tumbler acts like itty bitty little hammers beating on the thing, and it work hardens, but just the very outside of the piece, just a little bit. So if it's something like an earring post, sometimes it work hardens enough to make the earring post work, but it doesn't work harden truly all the way through. And that's okay for an earring post for the most part. We can get them to work harden enough to make it do what we want it to do. But for something like this, for a hook, it does not work harden it enough. So you're going to have to do something else. So one of the things that you can do is to, like I said, take your piece of wire, solder it shut, do whatever soldering you're going to do on it, do the bending afterwards. And then these are two different samples about, this is one. So this is a hook. This is just the attachment to it here. Yeah. There. And you can see that this hook has been hammered here and here. And it also was hammered here, up here, before it got bent. So when this was in a straight line, and I can demo this too if you want me to in just a little bit when I demo. So what I would do to make a hook that looks like this one is that I would bend this first, okay? And then I would hammer here. Then I would bend the whole thing, and then I would lay it down flat and hammer here and here. Make sense? Yeah? Okay, and what that does is that makes this very springy, so that when this comes, it again snaps in and out. Okay? This one is a narrower version of the same thing, and it's hammered more lightly, but it snaps. And that's what I'm after. I want something that snaps. This one is a little bit harder. Whoops, a little bit harder. Sorry, I keep forgetting that you guys can't see down low. To get this started, so what I would probably do is make this, in the future, I'd make this a little bit bigger so that this makes it open more easily. Okay? Okay. Being afraid the pieces will break if you work hard on them too much. Nope. You know, you have to really work at it to get them to break. It's possible, but just from hammering on it, not so much. The scoring and bending that I'm going to show you next is more, it's easier to break your pieces, but we'll talk about what to do when those break. Let me see if I covered all my notes. Hooks can be really gorgeous. They can really complement a piece. You can see a lot of the hooks that I do are, they're pretty much as interesting as the pieces are. There's a lot going on. Hang on. This is a commercial piece. And it is an enhancer, which a lot of you guys have. Oh my gosh, are you gonna be able to see this? See that little hook? Okay, and then if I turn this sideways, this one hinges. They don't all hinge, but this one does. Oh, I've got to hold on this with tweezers or something here. Here. There. Can you see this hinges right here? So I can move this back and forth. And then if I turn it frontwards, oh, it looks like that. And there's the hinge. And what this is meant for is that I could hook it over pearls or anything else and then hang a pendant from it. Okay. And they're pretty handy and they're pretty nice. And you can make your own that's not hinged. That's just two hooks, basically, a front hook and a back hook. Okay. Okay, are there any questions on hooks? Anything else you want me to cover? What do I use to form the shape of the loop? So the shape of the loop is, I use some of my very favorite, very proprietary tools. A pen, whatever's on my bench that's round. Yesterday, I found myself using Burt's Bees chapstick. I will use whatever's around that's the shape that I want. If it's a pair of pliers that has a handle on it that is, this pair of pliers has an oval handle that's really nice. If I want an oval, I'll just wrap it around that. I will wrap it around anything that's on my bench that's the right size and shape that I want. So it's just a matter of looking on your bench and figuring out what's there. I love Sharpie markers. I use anything from the really giant fat ones to, sometimes they're oval, sometimes they're round, to the middle-sized ones, to the little ones, to whatever I can find, whatever is the right size and shape. Any other questions? Anything?
Hi, can you show one or two more bracelet clasps?
Bracelet clasps. So the only thing that differentiates a bracelet clasp from something else is that you want to be sure that when it's slack, it's not going to come undone. So this one is a good one with the hollow form, just because it doesn't, right there, it doesn't easily come undone. To get it undone, I have to actually take the hook and bring it all the way through like this, all the way out. Okay.
Wow.
So another one that would be good for a bracelet, this one has worked well for me for years and years. This is the fused one that I did. And this one is, this one. So what happens with this one is it's got a hook, a little hook right there, but the hook is bent. Right here, it's tight there, you can see better. It's tight enough right there that it snaps in and out.
Popping over.
It's also long. So in order to get this out, this has to go all the way to here. It has to be that slack. Can you see that it has to, the end of the hook, let me see if I can do this so you can see it better. The end of the hook is way down here. So in order to get this piece off and on, it has to come down to here, snap in, and then in order to get it off, it can't just hit on there. It has to actually come down and snap out of there. And it's a long
Will you
hook.
demo that that snapping bit?
Right here.
Yes.
And that makes a big difference with bracelets. If they don't snap like that, if they don't, if that was a loose hook, this has a good chance of coming off of me, right? But if it snaps and if it's long, those two things together will make it so that bracelets will tend to stay on. Bracelets are harder than necklaces. You got to be a little bit better about engineering them, about figuring out what works and what doesn't and how it works. Bracelets also, one of the things you need to be a little bit careful about is that I like them to be such that I can do them myself. I don't like to have to call somebody to take a bracelet off of me or put a bracelet on me. This would be another good hook for a bracelet. Can you see this one? And the reason is that you have to hook it all the way around, come through here and through here. So in order to get it off, it doesn't just have to be slack, it has to be slack and turn around the piece. The other thing you can do for a bracelet is to make the loop that goes in here relatively tight. If it's a jump ring that fits in there relatively tightly, like this, then chances of this coming off are slim. But if I have something really large in here, say something like that, that's going to come off. Can you see that that can just slide this way and come off? But if I do something small, it can't easily do that. It can't, it's going to get stuck here. It can't easily come off. So a lot of it depends. This is another one that actually would work too. Can you see this? And the reason is the opening is right here and it's tiny. So for that one, what I would do is that it'll fit through barely, this wire will, but then when it's being worn, it's like this. So in order to come off, this has to come all the way back here and fit through that little hole. See that? Okay. So those are all good for bracelets. This one would
Thank
be really,
you.
yeah, this one would be good for a bracelet too. This one has a melted wire on the end, but it's work hardened to the point and it's big enough that this is really snug so that when I'm putting something on and off this, it's, see how tight that is? So that makes it so even if it comes over here, it's not going to come out unless I push on it really hard. Okay. Okay. Okay, compact. So smaller ones. Any of these can be made really small. This one is relatively small. It's probably 3/4 of an inch. I don't think it's a whole inch. So they can be relatively small. One of the things with a bracelet is hooks do take up a lot of space typically, unless you put them underneath something. So one of the things that you can do is if you have a bracelet with two parts coming along, there's no reason that you can't have like an eye on one side and a hook on the other. Oh, I'm going to bring up my whiteboard again. Okay. So if this is a bracelet part and this is a bracelet part, and on this side I have a jump ring, and on this side, oh, let's see if I can do this. I have this is a hook on this side. So this hook is going to go under here. There's two things I've done with this. One is I've made it really wide. That's going to make it more stable. One is I would work harden this, but the other one is that I've made it really long. And by making it long, I have to take this piece, turn it 90 degrees, slip it under here, and then pull it. Chances of that bracelet coming off are none. And if I engineer it right, those two parts are going to butt right up to each other and you won't see a clasp at all. It's hidden. And there's no reason you can't do that. Make sense? Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. Side view. Ha! Okay. I'll try that again. Let me try that. Okay, side view would look like this. This is my bracelet piece. This is my bracelet piece. This is a jump ring, okay? And it's elongated. I wonder if I can draw this 3D. Do you think I can do this? There. Okay, that's got a hook on it. This is a bracelet part, or that's not the hook. That's the what do they call that? I don't know. This side is going to have a hook that looks like this. There. So does that make sense? That what I'm going to have to do to get this to hook is I'm going to have to take this piece right here, this piece right here. I'm going to have to turn it 90 degrees because it's going to have this part, this little jump ring part is going to have to come way over here and snap into this hook. But when I get them snapped together, if I engineer this properly, this and this will butt up to each other. Does that make sense? Yeah, does that answer the question that someone asked? Okay, I have a slideshow to show you if you want to see the slideshow, and I'll talk you through the slideshow. Does that sound good? Everybody ready for the slideshow? All right, let's do it. So Okay, so what I have done with these is I've tried to group them for you. The first part is on bales, the second part is on hooks. The first part of these bales, this is on tubes, using tubes. And what I wanted to show you about this was the texture on the tube and how the texture integrates into what is here in the piece itself. Just to show you how bales can be part of the piece, or they can separate, they can be excited. This here. This is a piece of tubing, again, curved. When you curve tubing, by the way, if you don't want to curve it very much, one of the easiest things to do, you can just curve it by hand. Anneal it. What's going to happen when you curve it is that the very end is not going to curve. Okay, only the section in a little ways is. And often what I do when I want a piece of tubing that's curved, and curved just a little bit, if you want to curve it a lot, you need to use a different technique. But if you want to curve it just a little bit, you anneal it, curve it by hand. You can feel, if you're very careful and you work very gently, what you can do is that you can curve it just a little bit, and then I will curve probably 4 to 6 inches of it, and then cut those off in sections and use them as I need, so that I've got that around. Yes, you have permission to record this. I believe that I'm recording this. I'm not sure I'm recording this, but if I am, then I will let you know and let you have access to it. We'll see. Okay.
It says it's recording.
Good. This is another one where tubing is used, but you can see where the tubing, it's also got the moonstone above it so that this whole thing is integrated into one long piece. This is another one where the texture that's used on it's a square piece of tubing. It wasn't even tubing exactly. It was made into a tube from sheet, but it's the same texture that was used on the sheet down below. This is one where the tube obviously is, integral to the design in looking at it. Same with this one. And by using, you can see it's got the woven, like the steel cable here and here. So it's a way of connecting the cable and then connecting this visually to the linear design that's going on down here. This is one where the bale, this is the bale, and it's got attachment points here, but then it's got a hinge. So the whole thing is really integrated. It's like you can hardly tell the bale from the pendant, from the chain. It's all integrated together. This one similarly. Another one, now this one, it would have been very easy just to leave this, but by putting this on here, it, number one, makes it much more stable. And number two, gives it a lot more presence. It really sets it apart to have that. This is another one where the tube is really long. Again, the tube. And the tube here really goes nicely with the clasp up top. That's fun, huh? So this is one where the it's just the same wire that was used to do the setting, and because of the shape and stuff, it's going to ride really well. Another one where basically a coil is used. You have to be careful with a coil that it is round wire, that the ends are tucked in well or soldered down, so they're not going to get caught on things and they're not going to catch the chain. This is an interesting one. So it's just the piece itself and then beads put in between so that you don't see the chain in between, but it really makes that part of the entire piece, the design of the piece. This one is the design of the piece. So that is one piece of sheet metal. It's got some silver soldered to it in a couple places, but it just basically folds over, and it is, the bale is the piece. Same with this one, the bale is the piece. This is a hidden bale. I'm going to show you a series of hidden ones. So back when I did the original drawing, if you'll remember, of the necklace and where you put it on here, the way that you attach something that is a hidden bale is totally up to you. You can put a tube, you can do jump rings, you can do a hook, you can do all sorts of stuff. But, and these are all hidden. But you have to think about how that's going to look. These are hidden. This one is semi-hidden, so this is basically folded over and the chain goes through the folded over part. This one is, it's kind of a cross between hidden and not. So it's got an attachment point right here and an attachment point right here. So the chain is part of the design because the chain cuts that circle, right? It'd be really easy to put one up here and have it hang down. By doing two, not only is it more stable, but it brings the chain into part of the design. And especially since the chain has the little divisions in it, this has the little divisions in it, it really, really makes it go together well. This one hangs down below. So it's got one point of attachment. This one again has one point of attachment, but notice it's got this piece up above and then this piece down below. So again, the cable, the chain is part of the aesthetic design, and that it goes along with the curve of this stone just makes everything integrate together really nicely. Monica, this is one of Monica's, and you can see that she made the choice to put this piece right here so that it rides on the cable. The cable rides in the middle. It feeds into where the stone is here. It feeds into this, and then it makes this the center point of all those cables coming together. This is one of Mickey Lippy's pieces, and it's just got two little jump rings, but you can see, number one, having the two jump rings spread apart makes it more stable. And then also it's, the wire is very similar to the other wire that she's used in it. So it's just, it's a nice transition between that. And then the soft cord really goes along with her manipulation of the wire. This is a fun one. I just love this. It's got the forged ends, the little jump rings. It's just a nice way to hang something. This is another nice way to hang things. Look how nicely this goes together. I mean, without the bail, if you ignore the bail, that's not nearly as interesting a piece. The bail really, really, really adds a lot to this piece. This is an interesting one. So there's the two bails. Basically, the end here either has a ball soldered to it or it's balled up. I can't tell which. Probably has a ball soldered to it. And it's fed through the tube. So then it hangs evenly through that tube. This is a really nice one. This one has two jump rings here that go around this center piece. Nice engineering. Simple, clean. So this one just uses rawhide, and basically it's attached to the pendant itself. But what I want you to look at when you do this, this could be metal as well, is how these knots go along with the way the rest of this piece is put together. It's just a nice integration. It's a nice combination of elements. This one, again, I love the way this feeds down into here. It has the gold piece here, the little gold pieces here. It really makes your eye travel down, travel back up. It's a beautifully engineered piece. This is another one where the cable is important, that you see it all the way through. If this hung down lower, it wouldn't be nearly as interesting up here. And then again, it leads your eye down into here. You go here, here. It's well engineered. Another one. This one's going to be a little bit more shaky because it's only held up in the one place. This one, Janice, look familiar. This is a one of the bails that we made where we put the wire on the inside of it. And then what she did when she curved it over, these ends kick out, and that makes it ride on the chain really, really nicely. You can make these really wide, really narrow. Sometime if you want, I could do a demo on those. Whoops. What? This is a piece where I carved the bail, and this is the back of it. So you can see where it comes down the back. It comes down a ways. And that's like I was showing you earlier on some of the hooks and the bails and whatnot. I leave that extra long until I know that what I'm going to do with it. Because sometimes having it come down the back of a piece is really aesthetically pleasing. It also can make a much stronger connection. than just putting it on the very top. This is a pretty one. It's a tube, but it, you know, it again gives you those very straight sides, which contrast with the organic bead. They look really good. This is another one. This is a stone. This is a tension setting. And then the top is just flared to open. And again, rounded a little bit so the chain will feed through nicely. This is one where it's a forged wire and the wire is tapered, comes over and attaches. This one you guys have seen in class before. The bail basically is the piece. It's got a stone hanging, two stones hanging from the bottom, but the bail comes along and it's just a tapered piece of sheet metal. So when the bail flips over, you can see the back side of it and the inside of it. So one thing I didn't address that I should have addressed is that anytime I'm making a bail or a hook or anything, I want to clean up the metal as much as possible prior to bending anything. Because if I don't, getting inside here and cleaning this up after the fact is very, very difficult. So it's much easier if I can have the sheet metal absolutely clean, or the wire or whatever it is, absolutely cleaned up prior to bending anything over. And then if I make marks in it, I can clean that up after the fact, but then I don't have as much to clean up. This is another one, very simple piece, but it's got this forged element that comes down here. And then it's got a forged element that comes and flips over so that it ties those lines in together. These are two bails made with Crazy 8 wire, and they're just folded over, Crazy 8 wire, and then tapered. This one is rectangular wire and tapered. This one, in order to get that sharp corner up there, and it's like the one that I showed you earlier with the sharp corner, I did scoring and bending, which is what I'll demo in a little bit. This is another one with the rectangular wire tapered. Oh, on this one, notice it's only tapered on one side. So this side is tapered, this side is straight. And that's because if you look at my stone, this side is almost straight and this side is tapered. So what it does is that it accents this point right here in the middle, because the stone is tapering down to that and the bail is tapering down to that. Here's a bigger view. This one is Crazy 8 wire. This one is nice. This is square wire, and it's got the square wire comes on front of the piece and then goes behind the piece. And because it does that, it makes a perfect place for the chain to go through and fit through. The only thing you have to be careful of with this is that this spacing is wide enough to accommodate your chain. Otherwise, this piece is going to always want to turn on you. Okay, so you have to be sure that you've got enough width there to accommodate your chain. This one, the chain fits through way up here. And you can see that it just becomes part of the piece, so that all of this, the chain is another layer of the twisting in the wire. This one, the piece is the bail. And it hangs nicely, and I think it's really fun. Same with this one. The chain just goes through the whole thing and it lays there. Now, if this is not laying on your chest, if this is on a bracelet or something, it's going to turn sideways. You can see that, right? And the same would happen with the other one, with this one. If this was a bracelet, it would lay sideways. But because it's a flat sheet, and because this one is relatively flat, when it lays on your chest, it's going to lay there properly. This is April Audie's stuff, and you can see this is a hook number 1. And then she's got a really nice bail with this, but this has removable parts. This is a way to put more parts on and off, and you can interchange them and change them out and do whatever you want with them. This is another one. This one actually comes behind, and you could put things on and off here. This one has a hook. It's just an interesting piece. I don't know. We'll see. This is the How's It Hanging tweezers. For those of you who don't have them or don't know what I'm talking about, this is how I make them. It's a really quick tutorial. So most of you have them, especially if you've been in my class any length of time. This is a cheap $3 pair of tweezers from Rio Grande. What I do is to take a pair of pliers. Well, first of all, I dull the ends a little bit because I don't want them really sharp. I take a pair of pliers. I bend the ends to look like that. There you can see a better view of it. So this is hanging on a piece just to show you how it works to to figure out the center of gravity. And I showed you that earlier in the piece where you can take it and twist it around. So these are some pieces that look like they shouldn't hang well, and they do. And the reason they do is because, again, the bail is above the center of gravity. That's what you have to look at. So the bail, this is always going to hang with half of the weight on one side and half the weight on the other side. So if the bail is here and this is the center of gravity, you're good on this one. This one is the same way. Look at this. This is way over here. You would think, I don't know, this is going to hang well, but it is. Because if you follow this line down right here, the center of gravity is such that half the weight's on this side, half the weight's on that side. Okay? This is the same thing. So this has an attachment here, and it doesn't look like it should hang well, but it does, because if you follow this down, it's got half and half. So now we're starting hooks, and I'm going to show you a series of hooks. This was a picture taken from a book. This is a Calder piece, and you can see how the hook here is in the front, and because of the way it hooks together and snaps, that it will hold. This is an ancient piece, 8th to 7th century BC. Look at that, and it's got a hook on it, just like the ones we're doing now. All right, this is an interesting piece. I've got a close-up of the hook itself right there. So this one is soldered right here, but this hooks. And I'm going to go back. You can scarcely see where it is. This is a bracelet hook for anybody who those of you who asked about doing a bracelet. This is a bracelet hook, and again, because it snaps in so well and because it's long enough that you have to actually twist this piece to get it out, it's going to be a pretty secure bracelet hook. This is Tom Mccarthy's hook that he developed for cable, and I'll go through a real quick series with that, but basically you put the ball in, you pull it. This one has a hook down here. Can you see that? I would make this hook substantially longer, and especially since a lot of these pieces, as you go through here, have things that look like hooks, look like they could be hooks. And so there's no reason that you couldn't make that longer or something that's a little bit more complicated. My guess is that this one comes in around and over, so that getting this piece in, you have to really snap it in there, and then it'll tend to stay put. This one has the hook right over in here. And that's what it looks like being worn. So this one, again, is very good because it snaps in. But what you have to do is that this piece has to come all the way back and go through this ring in order to come undone. This is another one. The hook is way back here. Can you see that? This one, the hook, it's hard to see on this, but the hook actually comes over the top of itself. So that in order to hook this in, you have to come and pick it up and twist it and then push it around. Oh, that was Roger, not Tom. Sorry. Did I say Tom? Tom did the 2 stones. Roger did the clasp, the hook clasp. This is another one. This is just a little S clasp. This is a really nice one. So this is sheet metal in this bracelet. And in order to hook this one in, this is a T, so you have to feed it up through here and then pull back on it. And because it's a T, it has to go in sideways. And since it has to go in sideways, it's not going to fall off your wrist, right? Because you have to actually physically turn that one sideways to make that one work. This one I've shown you before. This is wood. But again, if you look at the points, now look at this one too. It hangs from here to here. Remember that that's always going to hang as a straight line. So if you have a hook that comes around like this, it's going to hang from here to here, not from down in here. If you want it to hang from down in here, you're going to have to engineer it differently. This is one we were talking about earlier about a bracelet. So Susan, you asked about this, about making the, saying that the clasp is way too long. This one has a centerpiece here. It wouldn't have to. You could do the same hook mechanism under the bracelet itself. This is the underside of it. Look, it's got this huge long hook that comes out. This hooks into this. so that when it's hooked together, see the little loop right there? That little loop would tie into this little loop down here, and you wouldn't see anything other than this on each end. Okay? This is another one that hooks, and I talked to you about this being extra long right here. So what happens with this is this hooks into this bar, this eye. And so all you do is bring it around, hook it in. If it's tight enough and long enough, then chances of coming off are really slim. You've got to really pull that all the way off. This is another one. I've shown you several of these. Notice that it's been work hardened right here. Okay, that by being hammered on a little bit. And notice that this sticks out. You have to be careful when you make this stick out really long that it's not pokey here or sharp or anything. You could put a ball on it. You could just round it, but you need to make sure that it's not going to stab people. This is another one with a little S hook on it. So part of it's soldered, part of it's not. This is another one with a long tab on it, and this tab goes into the eye up here. If you don't want this to slip around, this hook needs to be as wide as the opening is here, okay? And the hook also needs to be relatively long so that, again, it doesn't come off easily. These are interesting. These are Fred Zweigs, and they are ancient Japanese pieces. They are to hook the kimono belts together. But look how this goes in. And they are basically hooks. So what you do with this is you feed it up, you take this part, you feed it up through here at an angle and then lay it down. So you can hook a necklace on this side and you could hook a necklace on this side. And let me go back to what it looks like. And that's what it looks like together. And here's another one. So this is what it looks like from the back. So you can see there's a place to attach something here, a place to attach something here. I'm going to go back again and go back again. See how that one works? This is another one, but similar. So this is one like just like the little gold one that I showed you that has the hinge on it, but this one does not have a hinge. What this one has instead is a balled wire on either end and then a hook so that it can get hooked in and out of different pieces. This one, this is the same chain with a different pendant on it now. This is a fun hook, and this is one that's just a sample. This is one that's just a trial to see if it would work. So it's not, ultimately this would have to be soldered here. It would not be soldered here. I probably would solder this. I would solder this joint, I would solder this joint. This could be left and this work hardened to feed different pendants in and off of it. And that's a really beautiful, both a bail and a hook that would work for using for multiple pieces. This is Linda's, and look at the hook on this, and it relates very much, you can't see it as well, my photograph isn't great, but to the etching that she has down here, and then to the Picasso marble that she's got. So the hook itself, see how that, and here is the choke point, so it makes it tight, makes it hard to get it in and out. It's also long enough, and it's also a necklace that's relatively heavy, so chances of it coming off are very, very slim. This is a bracelet. This is Jeanette Parker made this. And the way this hooks is that these three wires are work hardened enough and spread wide. This is undercut right here. And this has a little latch on it. So you can see there's the little latch and here's the undercut. So when it's, and then it's got a hinge on the other side. So let me go back. So when this is snapped together, there, when this goes up into this, and this is really easy to do with one hand, it just snaps into here and then it holds everything in place. So that's basically the whole bracelet is a hook. See how that one works? These are, oh, this is also a hook. So these two fit into each other. There's the next, that's how they fit together. So what happens is that you have to take this piece and you feed it in through this one, lay this over the top of this, and then when they're together, they look like that, and they're stable. Same with this one. This is a keyed setting. So what happens with this one is the stone, this stone right here, comes up through this opening, and then it lays down into this area so that when it's closed, it looks like that. But it's basically just a hook. So does anybody have questions about what you've seen and what we've done so far?
Is there any way you could draw how the two decorated pieces fit together? They were like the last 3 or 4 slides.
Yeah. Maybe.
Are they like the stone that goes up like that key?
Yeah, all of them are. So basically it's got a part that has a hole in it. It's got a part that's got a hole in it. It's got another part. Hang on, let me find another part. Okay, this isn't going to be a good sample, but it'll work. So it's got a part that's got a hole in it. It's got this. What happens is you feed one through the other, and then because of the way it's engineered, they can lay down together. This doesn't do it because these are both flat. What I
Right.
would have to do is that I would have to engineer that that when they lay together, that they can't wiggle around, number one. I don't want them to be able to shift on each other. So I need to do something that locks them in. And that's the reason they have kind of a frame to them. You know, it is a little bit complicated to engineer those. If you want that, I could do a whole separate thing on that, but it's going to take some engineering. But basically, yes, it's like this. They're both like the stone. They're all like the stone one, where they go, and like the Japanese ones from Fred, where they go up inside one and then they twist and or turn and then come flat and then they're locked in. Does that help? Yeah, I don't think I can easily draw it, but
I would love a class on that. Those are really nice.
okay. I'll work on that. I will get there. So when I do scoring and bending, what I like to do, this is just a piece of thick sheet metal. This is, oops, now where's the camera? There we go. Oh, I gotta find the camera. There. So this is really thick sheet metal that I've cut at an angle. And a lot of times when I do these, you guys know I use these tapered lines a lot. A lot of times when I do these, what I will do is to use a piece of rectangular wire and I'll just split it. And I know that's a little bit wasteful cost-wise, but what I have to tell you is that that's one saw line instead of 3 saw lines, right? And so for time, which time is money, time makes a big difference. So for that, it does make a huge difference if I can just make that one line and then I'll have 2 pieces like this that are tapered. Okay, so I need to hold on to this, number one. I can use a ring clamp, but I love this pair of pliers. This pair of pliers has saved my hands.
Oh, yes.
And so what I can do with that is I can just grab onto that. Now on the bench pin here, I've got a notch kind of filed into the side of this. And you see my bench pin isn't straight, it's got a notch right there. That's so that I can hold things like that when I need to, or like that when I need to file. But for this, what I'm gonna do is I want something stable. I'm gonna hit this against the end of my bench pin here so that I can, when I'm pushing with the file, okay, so what I can do is then I can have this, and when I'm pushing with the file, this is pushing against the bench pin, so I'm not having to fight it, right? I have control over that. Now, files, let's talk about that really quick. This is an 8-inch file, and I want that because the longer the file, the more work I get with each stroke that I take. And so if I have a longer file, If I have a longer file, then it's fewer strokes that I have to take to make the piece. I also want to be sure with my file that I don't have one with a blind side. A lot of times on a file, one side or the other will be blind, which means it has no teeth on it. If I have that, I'm only cutting with one side, and then I'm not going to get an even notch. So I want to figure out where it is that I want the bend to be. And it can be pretty much anywhere. And it can also be not perpendicular to the piece that I'm working on. And if it's not perpendicular, hold on, it can come out looking like this one. Can you see how this is laid over? It's not straight.
Yeah.
And that can look really nice because when I'm looking at it frontwards like this on a piece, then I see the back of that bail. I see the inside of that. Or it could be this way, hanging on a piece and work.
Hey, Deb, have
Yeah.
you done the group mute?
No, but I will. So after I have the file here, then what I want to do, and this is stable, so that when I push on this, it's not going to go forward. Then what I do is to figure out where I want this. And I'm holding my file at an angle. Here, let me see if I can do this. About 45 degrees like this. And if it's not exactly right, it's okay. It really is. There's a lot more forgiveness in this than you'd think there would be. So what I want to do is to see how long that file stroke can be. And it gave me a pretty good notch so that I can get back in there and be on that same notch again. This is one where if I'm careful, I can go back and forth. I want to check, I want to stop every now and then and check. And I want to make sure that on this, that what's happening is that it's relatively even on both sides, that I'm not laying my file down too far that way or too far up, that I'm laying it at the 45-degree angle. So it's filing relatively evenly. And that I'm not doing more on one side than the other, that I'm keeping it relatively even as it goes across. Now I want to file about halfway to 2/3 of the way through. I could even go 3/4 of the way through, but I do need to be a little bit careful because if I go too far, I'm going to break it. Okay. Now, when I do this, there. When I do this, can you see? So this is about halfway through now, which is pretty good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. Let's see if I can get it closer. There, can you see the edge there? It's about halfway through. So I would go a little bit further. Now, because the file took out a right angle, it's actually gonna, when I fold this up, would be a right angle also. However much I take out, whatever angle I take out, plus the angle that it bends to is going to be 180 degrees. Now, that's a little complicated, I know. What that means is if I only want to bend it just a little bit, if I want to, you know what, I'll do a whiteboard thing on this afterwards for the angle. If I want to make this bend really tight, what I'm going to do is to lay my file down. I've been filing like this at a 45-degree angle. I'm going to lay this down so I file it wider. And I'm going to stand it up so I file it wider on the other side. And then once I have that filed, what I'm going to do is to take a pair of pliers. And I'm going to take this and I'm just going to bend it up. Now you have to be a little bit careful with this because if you bend too much, too far, too fast, what's going to happen is this is going to snap. If this snaps, what you can do is go back in and solder it. And you can see I went a little far right here on the corner. Can you, oh, why did it stop?